like we are stepping into the dim corridors of a life few ever noticed. Yet millions once lived, the hour is late, and the wind outside has quieted. A nearby lantern flickers, casting long golden shadows across your floor. Perhaps there's a cup of warm tea beside you, or maybe just the sound of the night humming gently outside your window. Let it all go for now. You are not here, not anymore. Instead, you are kneeling on cold tatami, the straw fibers imprinting into your knees. Your eyelids still feel heavy, but you've been awake long enough for your breath to have flattened into a rhythm. The room is silent, not peacefully silent, but watchfully silent. Your master's chambers lie beyond the screen door. You never knock, you never speak first. Your job is to disappear into usefulness. It's the Edo period, and you are a live-in genin, the lowest tier servant in a mid-ranking samurai household. That sounds noble, doesn't it? But really, you're a glorified alarm clock, a laundry list in human form, a pair of hands without a voice. You rise before the roosters, before the temple bell, before the morning incense in the ancestral shrine can even burn. The first task: check that the embers in the charcoal pot didn't die in the night. Because if your master wakes to cold ash, it's not just your back that gets scolded. It's your family name that sags under shame. Your feet slide soundlessly along the wooden floors, and every creak is memorized. Where to avoid, where to toe step. You pull back the first screen with 2 fingers. Not too fast, not too slow. The rhythm matters. Everything in this life is rhythm. Next is the water basin. You carried 2 buckets from the garden spout. One warm, one cold. It's still black outside. The crows haven't even stirred. As you lift the bamboo ladle and pour water over a folded linen cloth, you wonder, did you dream last night? You can't remember. Dreaming is a luxury. You press the cloth against your own cheeks before entering. That quick jolt of freezing water is the only moment that belongs to you. Then, you place a second warm towel on a lacquered tray. That one is his. The master's door is slightly ajar. He trained you to do that. Leave it open just a thumb's width, so he'd know whether you approached on time. By the draft it let in. No need for clocks, just the door, the wind, and your punctuality. You kneel outside, tray in hand, waiting. Some mornings he grunts, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes you wait 5 minutes. Your calves trembling, tray steady as a shrine. Eventually, the screen slides, not by your hand, never by your hand. You bow, the tray rises slightly. He takes the towel, never looking at you. Hot water, he says without inflection. Not thanks, just observation. You'd be punished if it wasn't. But when it is, he says nothing. He begins his ablutions in silence. You clean around him like air. You open the window screens one by one to let the pale gray morning in. The first gust of breeze ruffles the papers on his desk. You smooth them down with one hand, always using the cloth, never your skin. Now the swords, always 2, katana and wakizashi. You don't touch them yet. First, you prepare the oilcloths. You sit Caesar on the floor, back straight, hands on thighs. The ritual of waiting is its own task. Outside, you hear distant sandals. Maybe a higher-ranking retainer has arrived early. That's bad. You quicken the tea preparation. One hand pours, the other scoops. The kettle had to be hot already. You set the bowl on a small wooden tray and slide it forward into the master's view. not crossing the invisible boundary between servant space and warrior space. He drinks, not fast. You count the sips to time your next task. 7 sips, same every morning. Now the swords. He lifts them from the rack and places them beside you. It's the unspoken order. You polish the blades gently. Cloth looped around your fingers just like your uncle taught you when you were 11. The scent of oil and steel and ash hangs in the air like a hymn. The metal is cold, colder than the wind, colder than his silence. You inspect the blade for spots. None. You'd never let there be spots. Still, you pretend to search. That's part of the act. You draw a cloth down the length of the blade. 1,000 small motions, one long performance. The light outside turns soft gold. Your stomach growls. Too early. No food yet. Not for you. Today is a training day. He'll head to the yard to drill forms with the younger retainers. You'll follow behind him at 2 paces. Always 2. 1 is disrespect. 3 is cowardice. 2 is correct. But for now, you bow again. He stands. The moment he does, you begin folding his sleep kimono, brushing off invisible lint, pressing the fold line against your own thigh to straighten it. Shiro, he says, that's you, that's your name, but you rarely hear it unless something is wrong. He turns, his eyes glance toward the corner where your bedding was. The bedding you've already folded. Perfectly. Good. He says nothing else. That's the highest compliment you'll get today. He leaves the room. You are alone. For 5 seconds. You breathe, deeper than before. The pressure releases just enough to let your shoulders drop. Then you rise, gather the towels, empty the basin, and begin preparing the courtyard mats. The drill start at sunrise, and you're only just getting started, because to serve a samurai is to disappear into precision, and if you do your job well, no one ever notices you. The sun isn't fully up yet, but you already feel the warmth of it creeping in through the sliding doors. The paper panels glow faintly, not bright enough to see by, but enough to mark the transition between invisibility and responsibility. You carry the folded night garments in both hands, pressed close to your chest, careful not to let a single thread drag on the floor. Today is armor day, not the full ceremonial set. Those are reserved for court processions or official visits. But even the simpler training armor requires your undivided attention. Every plate, every strap, every cord and knot has its place. Just one misaligned tag could send your master into quiet fury, and his fury never arrives in shouts. Only stillness. That's worse. You begin by unrolling the armor mat. The room smells of lacquered wood, pressed cloth, faint metal. You lift each piece of the dumaru, the torso armor, setting it into position on the mat like a child handling ancestral bones. You are not allowed to kneel directly on the mat. You hover beside it, one knee on the wooden floor, back straight, hands careful. First, the under padding, called shiitake. You shake it once in the air. Just once, that's the rule. Any more is seen as doubt. Then you lay it down and press out the creases with the side of your palm. You once asked your cousin, who serves a merchant family, what her mornings are like. She told you she rolls rice balls, sweeps entryways, and walks the daughter to calligraphy lessons. You remember feeling strange. You tried not to show it. Her life sounded simple, but also soft. Yours is neither. The next task is to check the Sunni 8 shin guards. The straps often come loose during drills, and if they slip during a match, your master could be injured. That's not just a physical issue. That's dishonor. You test each tie twice. You trim the end of one strap with a knife so sharp it cuts through the cloth like wet paper. The tip of your finger almost follows. Almost. You suck the sting quietly. No blood. Good. If there were, you'd have to hide it. He hates the sight of blood off the battlefield. Says it makes a man look untrained. You remember a morning 2 seasons ago. The buckle of his chest plate had a small crack. You noticed it but didn't mention it. You thought, perhaps, it wouldn't matter. By evening, it had snapped during training. He didn't strike you. He never would. Instead, he stood still for a full minute, then said, "A broken clasp means you were thinking of something else." Never think of something else. You learned your lesson. Today, you polish the kabuto, the helmet, with a blend of oil and ash. Your cloth moves in small, circular motions, smoothing the curve of the iron dome. The crest atop it, a small bronze emblem in the shape of a crescent moon, catches the growing daylight. It's decorative, sure, but also symbolic. A warrior who wears the moon must move in silence. His blade, like the moon's reflection, must land without a sound. That's what he told you once, while sharpening his blade under a sakura tree. You reach for the katana next. It's laid on its rack, edge facing up. As always, you bow slightly before lifting it, a ritual as old as your name. The katana is not just a weapon, it's your master's soul. Passed down, sharpened, worshipped. You've heard stories of servants punished for breathing too close to the blade. One whisper of disrespect and generations of spirit could turn their back on the family. You never touch the blade directly, only the cloth. You pass it along the spine, then the edge, careful not to draw it more than a thumb's width unless ordered. The sound of the cloth against steel is quiet, clean, like someone sighing in their sleep. It's moments like this when the house feels most alive, not bustling, not noisy, but alert. A household of sleeping warriors always listens. Then the call comes, a light knock against the post. "Ready," says a voice. It's the higher-ranked retainer, Takeshi. You bow deeply as he enters the room. He's a quiet man with fingers like tree bark and a face that rarely smiles. He doesn't speak to you often, but when he does, he always calls you boy, even though you're nearly 20 now. Together, you dress your master. He stands in the middle of the room like a statue of war. One arm lifts slightly for the shiitake, the underrobe. You both slip it on him simultaneously, like dressing a spirit. Next, the armored plates over shoulder. Down the side, tied with practiced rhythm, you watch Takeshi's fingers and follow his pace. Too slow and you insult him. Too fast and you seem impatient. Once dressed, your master nods, barely. He says nothing, and that means everything is correct. As he turns to leave, you spot a loose thread on his shoulder. Tiny, barely visible, but it's there. Takeshi didn't catch it. Your heart starts tapping faster than it should. You reach out, quick, firm, precise, and pinch the thread with your nail, pulling it down and snapping it clean in one motion. You step back before anyone notices. But he does. Your master pauses in the doorway. You hold your breath. He turns his head slightly, just enough that his eye meets yours. For half a second, You think he might reprimand you for touching him without order, but he simply nods once, then walks out. You exhale, loud enough for no one to hear. You remain behind to tidy the room. A drop of oil from the cloth has spotted the edge of the armor mat. You blot it quickly, then flip the mat over to hide it. Next time, you'll use less oil. You always learn, quietly. That's the rule. Outside, you hear the clack of sandals in the hush of sliding doors. The morning training has begun. You are not needed for now. Not yet, so you return to the laundry corridor. You refill the basins. You scrape mud off yesterday's KB socks. You prepare the robes that will be worn after the drills. You press them with a block of warm wood, not an iron. He says irons make things look too new. And a samurai should never look like he just got dressed. Time slips forward, light brightens. Somewhere in the kitchen, the rice begins to boil. You stretch your fingers and shake out your wrists. They ache, but you ignore it. You count the tasks left in the day. There are 27, you've done 4, and now it's time to deliver tea to the training yard. You carry the tray with both hands. The cup rattles softly against the wood. A breeze lifts the curtain at the hallway's end, and you pause there for a moment. For just one moment, to breathe, to feel that wind, to remind yourself that you are not the sword, not the armor, not the noise of war. You are the quiet before all of it, and that is your place. The tray in your hands is warm, not from the food itself, it's long since cooled, but from the residual heat of the bamboo bowl and the black lacquer of the serving platform. You carry it carefully, the way you'd carry your own heartbeat if you could lift it in your hands. No sloshing, no spills, 1 cup of broth, 1 small plate of pickled daikon, a neatly folded cloth napkin, all arranged in silence, always in silence. Breakfast for the master is not a meal. It is an event. You walk the narrow hallway toward his private quarters. Your eyes don't look up. You've memorized every board, every crack in the floor, every beam that groans when pressure shifts across it. You step just left of the 3rd plank before the corner. It squeaks when it rains. This morning, the wood is dry, but you avoid it anyway. Out of habit, out of survival. Outside, the sun is climbing, soft and indirect, filtered through rice paper panels and casting slow-moving light across the walls. You feel hunger. It pulses low in your stomach, not desperate, but constant. The ache is familiar. It hums like an old song under your breath. The screen door is already ajar. That's your cue. You kneel, raise the tray to eye level, and bow your head low. Then you slide the tray forward into the room, keeping your knees on the wooden threshold. The moment it crosses the invisible border between your world and his, you stop, you wait. He's there, kneeling in his formal robe, writing something slowly with a brush. You can't read it from this angle, but the tip of the brush bends delicately across the parchment, words made of silence. You don't ask, you never will. Without looking at you, he raises one hand, a flick of 2 fingers. You bow again, rise, and walk backward 2 steps before turning down the hallway. You've delivered hundreds of meals like this. You've never once seen him take the first bite. That, too, is your place, somewhere between preparation and disappearance. In the kitchen, the other servants move like ghosts, like a well-practiced orchestra of steam and blades and clinking cups. The cook, old Ichiro, gives you a nod, the only kind of kindness bitterness he has left in him after 4 decades of making other people's food. His hands are like gnarled tree roots, darkened from soot and age. "You eat later," he says under his breath, not to you directly, not really to anyone, but it's enough. You catch the message. Later. The problem is, later never has a fixed time. You begin cleaning. The bowls from yesterday's evening meal are still soaking in the wooden tub. You roll up your sleeves, dip your hands into cold water, and feel the slimy softness of rice that's lost its shape overnight. You scrub with a bundled rice brush made of palm fibers. No soap, just friction. The thought occurs to you. When was the last time you actually tasted the food from this kitchen? You can smell the broth, miso with dried bonito flakes, a touch of wild onion. You can feel it in your nose. You imagine the warmth traveling down your throat, the comfort of it curling around your stomach like a small, respectful fire, but imagining it is all you're allowed. There are leftovers, yes, but those are for the animals, or sometimes the lower boys who chop firewood. You're too close to the master for that. Too visible, too replaceable. It's strange, isn't it? The closer you get to power, the less you're allowed to enjoy the basics. It's not a punishment, not exactly. It's something worse, it's structure. Invisible rules shaped like iron. "Shiro," the voice comes. You straighten. The assistant steward stands behind you. Eyes narrow. He never smiles. His name is Kenji. He once told you his father was a sake brewer and he gave that up to serve in this house. You never asked why. You assumed the answer was both complicated and disappointing. The lady requests tea. Ah, the mistress, the master's wife. You bow slightly and begin preparing the tray. Her tastes are particular. The water must be boiled from the kettle in the south room, the one with the plum blossom motif. The teacup must be warmed with a swirl of hot water before the real tea enters. She notices everything. She never complains. But when she's displeased, the other servants seem to suffer more. That's how you know. As the tea steeps, you think back to your own mother. She used to make barley porridge with pickled plum. On cold mornings, the kitchen would smell like simmered rice and damp cloth. She'd hum while stirring. You haven't heard anyone hum in this house for years. When the tea is ready, you deliver it without error. Your hands are steady. Your eyes remain respectfully downward. You do not speak. She nods. You retreat. You wonder, when was the last time you laughed? Not smiled, laughed. The kind of laugh that makes your ribs shake and your breath catch. You can't remember. You're not even sure your face remembers how. A bell rings from the garden. It's the shoji chime, a signal that the master is finished with his meal. You return to his chamber. He is gone. The tray remains. You kneel again, collect it in silence, and carry it back to the kitchen. The bowl is mostly empty, save for a strip of daikon and a curl of seaweed at the rim. His chopsticks rest perfectly across the ceramic edge, exactly as protocol dictates. You're not hungry anymore, or at least, the hunger has gone quiet, slipped beneath the surface. You place the bowl into the tub, wipe the tray with a cloth, and hang it on its wooden peg. The day is still young, but it's already filled with things you've touched and never tasted. Later, in the courtyard, you sweep fallen petals from the stepping stones. Pink, white, pale red, the sakura are shedding. You think about the poet who wrote, "Each petal falls like a breath we forget to exhale." And you keep sweeping. The courtyard is swept, the robes are folded, the breakfast tray is cleaned and returned to its shelf, and the teacups are drying in their bamboo rack. Still, you do not sit. Still, you do not rest. The day has only just begun its second act. From across the hall, a call. The master is heading to morning drills. This is where your presence becomes dangerous. When a samurai trains, his body is visible, but his mind is veiled. He drills not for war but for precision, for posture, for control, and you, servant though you are, become an unspoken participant. Your role is not to train. Your role is to exist beside the training without interfering, without faltering, without even being remembered. You step 2 paces behind him as he walks out. Always 2. 1 is too bold. 3 is too slow. 2 is perfect. It's invisible. The training yard has already begun to stir. Young retainers are warming up, stretching, loosening their limbs. The clatter of wooden swords on wooden racks mixes with the muted thumps of bare feet on packed earth. It is orderly, it is quiet, but beneath the order lies something far more dangerous than swords: politics. Among these warriors, every look matters, every bow, every timing of a breath. You, the servant, walk through this field of glances like someone balancing a tray of broken glass. You know who is secretly favored. You know who envies that favor. You know who watches your master with subtle resentment and therefore watches you. Because if they cannot touch him, they can make you flinch. Your job begins with unrolling the mat. You kneel at the edge of the training square and press your hands against the soil, checking for stones, moisture, anything that could interfere. You smooth the ground with the side of your hand. You pour fresh sand across the line and rake it into a clean edge. Then, with the care of someone drawing prayer lines in a temple garden, you place the practice sword, Bakken, exactly where he expects it. You do not look up. You feel his feet enter the ring behind you. You retreat quietly, bowing out backwards until your knees hit the grass. Then you sit, and you wait. The drills begin. The first form is fluid, wide steps, sweeping arc, stillness. His Bakken whistles softly in the air. The second form is harsher, shorter, with foot stomps and sudden strikes. You hear his breath. It's measured. Every exhale is a warning. Occasionally, another samurai joins him for sparring. That's when your alertness sharpens. These sparring matches are not truly equal. They're tests, displays. Every move your master makes will be studied, and so will your reaction to them. If your master lands a perfect strike, you must remain calm, no satisfaction in your face. If he loses footing or slips slightly, you must not shift. You are not allowed to wince, not allowed to glance at others for their reactions. Once, a servant from another house was caught clenching his jaw when his master missed a block. 2 weeks later, he was reassigned to chamber pod duty. Another month, and he was gone entirely. Rumors said he was sold into labor in the north. You never found out the truth. Now, as your master parries an overhead strike and pivots elegantly, you lower your gaze, not to disrespect, but to avoid seeing anything that might cost you. There's an odd tension here. In serving a warrior so closely, you become a mirror, but one that must never reflect anything too clearly. You exist in the periphery of glory and danger. Today, during the third form, his sparring partner stumbles. Your master doesn't laugh. He never would. Instead, he stills, waits, lets the man rise with dignity, and you sit, statue still, feeling the air around the group harden like lacquer. There are things worse than falling. Shame is one of them. When the drills conclude, you rise, you bring a folded towel, soaked earlier in jasmine-scented water. You hold it at chest level, arms extended, eyes down. He takes it, wipes his brow once, then drops it back on the tray. He does not thank you. Of course not. That is not your place. Later, he stays behind to speak with a visiting official, an older samurai with a round face and slow steps. You step further back, out of earshot, but not out of range. If he gestures, you must return immediately. You remain alert, breathing slow. Suddenly, you feel eyes on you. You look up briefly, just a glance, and meet the gaze of another retainer from a rival house. His eyes are narrow, unreadable. His lips twitch into a half-smile. You lower your gaze again, heart thudding. Later, when you return to the main house, you will replay that glance in your mind a dozen times. Was it friendly? Was it a warning? Was it a mistake to meet it? Historians still debate whether low-ranking retainers in this period had social mobility. Some records suggest a few rose to trusted advisor roles. Others say the ceiling was unbreakable. All you know is that one wrong expression, one perceived slight, one twitch of envy witnessed at the wrong time, can define your life forever. Your master finishes the conversation. He turns, gestures once. You follow, again at 2 paces, heart still caught in that one passing glance. And as the sun climbs higher, you realize something strange. The drills are finished, the blades are sheathed, the performance is over. But the danger is not, because here, among men who carry swords not just on their hips but in their eyes, you must never forget, every step you take is a test. You are sent out with a scroll before midday. The master hands it to you with a short nod, as though he's placing a cup on a shelf, not acknowledging the weight of it, not asking if you have sandals that still fit, not caring whether you ate breakfast or not. It doesn't matter. The message matters. You tuck it inside your sleeve, against your forearm, close to your body, always the left side. That's tradition. If someone sees it, they'll assume you're ill-trained. If someone stops you, they'll assume you've done something wrong. And if you lose it, there is no scenario for losing it. That's a story that doesn't get told, because no one lives to tell it. Your route takes you through the back lanes of the village, past the rice storage, the fishmongers, the alleys that smell like fermented straw and sweat. You walk briskly but not hurried. A messenger doesn't run unless fire is behind him. You walk like you've done this your entire life, because you have. The scroll is tied in gold twine, subtle, but telling. It means the recipient is someone of similar status to your master. You don't know who, and you never ask, not out loud. The wax seal is warm in your mind's eye. You haven't looked directly at it, but you've glimpsed the pattern, a carp and a pine tree. You've seen it before, somewhere. You pass a group of children playing with dried reeds, slapping them into puddles. One of them shouts, "Hey, servant," and mimics your straight-backed walk. You don't turn, you don't respond. That would make it worse. Your footsteps fall into rhythm, heel, toe, soft scrape of cloth. You count them, 23 from the gate to the bridge, 17 more to the stone marker, another 30 to the gate of the recipient's estate. When you arrive, a younger servant greets you. He's barefoot. That means he's lower than you. He bows quickly, eyes never rising. You place the scroll gently on the tray he extends. He bows again, and that's it. You're dismissed without a word. You walk back without being invited in. That's part of the protocol. Servants don't visit, they deliver. As you turn onto the dirt path heading home, you think, how many messages like this have you carried? Letters that ended marriages, messages that declared alliances, notes that moved soldiers, warnings that kept heads attached to shoulders. You held secrets more valuable than silver, more explosive than black powder, and never read a single one. But sometimes, the weight of the paper tells you enough. Once, last year, you delivered a sealed packet in the middle of the night. The master had spoken only 2 words, "Don't read." That was the first time he ever warned you directly. The man who took the scroll from you had tears in his eyes. The next day, that man's brother was publicly executed. You never asked. That's not your place. Today, on the walk back, the clouds roll in, soft and blue-gray like folded silk. You welcome it. Overcast days are safer. Fewer people outside. Less staring. Less opportunity for conversation you can't afford to have. The merchant calls out to you as you pass. "Hey there, you. Do you know when Lord Masao returns?" You shake your head politely. "Don't stop. I heard something," he adds. You keep walking. You always keep walking. Because here's the truth they don't write about in the scrolls. Sometimes a servant knows everything and says nothing. And sometimes he knows nothing and gets punished like he does. You arrive back at the estate just after the noon bow. You remove your sandals, step lightly through the rear gate, bow to the gardener, and report to Kenji. He grunts. Return to your quarters. He may call you again. You bow and walk the long corridor past the interior garden. The koi pond ripples gently beneath the surface. You remember when one of the fish went missing. The master accused a visiting cousin's servant of theft. The boy was whipped behind the storehouse. The fish turned up 2 days later in the mouth of a heron. No one apologized. You enter your quarters, a small room the width of your outstretched arms. 1 futon, 1 bucket, 1 folded robe. You kneel, stretch your back, rub the arch of your foot. Then you open your palm. There, faintly imprinted on the skin from where the scroll pressed against your arm, is the raised outline of the seal. Carp and pine. You whisper the name under your breath. Lord Hashimoto. Arrival. The message today was not casual. You inhale slowly. The air smells like tatami, dust, and ink. You will never speak of this. Not even to yourself. Historians argue whether samurai servants were merely tools or quiet informants. Some say they held the entire household together, part spy, part ghost, part shield. Others believe they were disposable. You've never been sure which one you are, but you know one thing. Your silence is your sword, and every time you return from a message without being questioned, without being followed, without being remembered, you win. Before the household fully stirs from its afternoon stillness, you are already sliding the soft cedar doors open with the palms of your hands. Fingers tucked in respectfully, sleeves pulled high to avoid brushing against sacred walls. The clan shrine awaits. It is a room barely wider than your master's sleeping mat, yet it contains the weight of 1,000 years. The light here is dim, filtered through aged washi paper screens. The air smells of old wood, smoke, and something quieter, something like memory, the kind of scent that clings more to the spirit than the nose. You bow low at the entrance, the way your father taught you, the way he told you never to forget, even when rushing, even when sore, even when your knees screamed. Inside, everything is ordered. A scroll bearing the family crest hangs behind a narrow altar, flanked by black lacquered panels etched with golden cranes. Beneath the scroll, a small offering platform. On it, 2 ceramic bowls for rice and water, a miniature brazier for incense, and a weathered bell shaped like a lotus bud. This is the spiritual heart of the estate, and no one ever talks about it, not even your master. You begin by gathering the previous offerings. The rice is dry and cracked, hardened overnight. You pinch it with cloth-covered fingers, never bare, and place it into the disposal box outside. The water you pour slowly into a hollow stone drain in the garden. You never dump it. That's disrespectful. Spirits, they say, don't like sudden gestures. When you return, you sweep the tatami mat with a brush made of bundled reeds. Every sweep goes outward from the altar, never inward. You still remember the day you swept incorrectly. One stroke against the grain, and the head steward saw. He didn't say a word, but later that night, your dinner was half its usual size. Spirits aren't the only things that notice. You kneel to replace the rice. Just 2 spoonfuls, molded in a perfect dome. The water is drawn from the special well behind the storehouse, the one that's never used for cooking or bathing. Some say it's blessed, some say it's cursed. You've drawn from it so many times you no longer care. You just hope the rope doesn't snap. Today, the incense is sandalwood. Yesterday it was pine. You light it with a long matchstick, shielding the flame with your palm, as though protecting something precious. The smoke spirals upward, slow and sleepy, as if reluctant to rise. You ring the bell once. The sound is soft, but deep. It lingers in the chest more than the ear. And you bow, longer this time, because this is the moment that doesn't belong to the master. This is the moment that belongs to the family, the ancestors, and, just maybe, to you. You whisper your thanks, not aloud, not even fully formed, just the feeling of it behind your teeth. Gratitude for not being punished yesterday. Gratitude for not being cold today. Gratitude for being unnoticed, for a servant. That is sometimes the highest form of safety. As you rise, you glance at the old scroll. The ink is faded at the edges, the lines delicate and precise. It lists the names of those who came before, warriors, advisors, midwives, spies. One name is always smudged. You don't know if it's from age or shame. You once asked the gardener. He only shrugged. Some names don't want to be remembered, he said, or some are remembered too well. Historians debate the role of these ancestral shrines. Some believe they were mere formality, showpieces for political respectability. Others argue they were deeply personal, that warriors often wept before them, begging the dead for guidance before battle. There are stories of samurai leaving strands of hair, teeth, or even broken arrowheads at the altar after surviving a duel. You believe the second version. You've seen the way your master stands before the shrine on some nights. You've seen his hands tremble just before the incense burns out. You say nothing, of course. After the offerings are set, you clean the altar cloth, shaking it gently outside. brushing each corner with a feather to remove dust. You recenter the bowls. They must align with the back edge of the platform. Not too close, not too far. The space between them matters. Space always matters in this house. By the time you finish, the sun has shifted. Afternoon light now filters through the screens, warming your back slightly. The incense has curled into a faint line across the air, like someone writing with invisible ink. Before you leave, you bow once more, and then, just before sliding the door shut behind you, you whisper something you're not supposed to. Please remember me. The words are quiet, ridiculous, even, you're just a servant, you're not part of the scroll. You'll never be carved into a gravestone. Your name, Shiro, will vanish like steam above a teacup. But still, the whisper escapes. Maybe that's all you ever get. Maybe that's enough. Outside, the corridor feels brighter. You return the matchbox to its shelf, empty the disposal bowl behind the garden wall, and wash your hands in the basin meant for ceremonial rinses. The cold water bites, but you welcome it. It reminds you you're still here, still part of the household, still useful, and as long as you're useful, you remain, and as long as you remain, the ancestors might keep listening. The afternoon is reserved for stillness. Not rest, never rest, but the ceremonial kind. The kind that moves slowly, delicately, like someone tiptoeing across silk. Today is a tea gathering, not a feast, not a party. It's quieter than either. And for you, it's the most exhausting event of the day. You begin by gathering the items. The tea caddy must be wiped with a specific cloth. Not just any cloth, the pale brown one with stitched white thread. You know the difference. You've seen what happens when someone confuses the cleaning cloth with the presentation cloth. There was a boy once, Mitsuha, who mixed them up. He left 3 weeks later, and no one spoke of it again. You select the tea bowl. It has a crack, intentional, of course. Wabi-sabi, beauty and imperfection, but that beauty must be displayed at the correct angle. If the guest sees the wrong side, it's not character, it's insult. The charcoal is selected from the special box. Long, straight pieces, no splinters. You measure them with your eye and adjust by instinct. You can't afford to misjudge. One time, a piece burned too fast, and the entire room became stuffy halfway through the ceremony. No one said anything, but you were told not to eat the next morning. The lady of the house will host. The master will attend, as will one guest of equal rank. That means your movements must be twice as quiet. Every step is a punctuation mark in an invisible poem. You do not breathe aloud. You do not cough. You become breathless presence as they enter the chishitsu. You kneel just outside the door. You're not allowed inside, but you must be close enough to hear the subtle tap of the host's fan, a signal for assistance. Not a shout, not a bell, just the softest sound of fabric against bamboo. The door slides open. You bow deeply. Your forehead brushes the mat. You slide the tray forward, your fingers tucked inward. You do not look at anyone's face, especially not the guest. The lady of the house takes the tray. Her sleeves are embroidered with plum blossoms today. Her hair smells faintly of hinoki wood and dried chrysanthemum. She says nothing. She never does. You return to your corner. Not quite hidden, not quite seen. A shadow behind the paper screen. Inside, the ceremony begins. You listen to the sounds. The click of the ladle against the bowl. the gentle pour of water, the whisking motion of the chasen as it stirs powdered green into foam. The silence between these sounds is intentional, practiced, reverent. The master speaks sparingly, a compliment about the shape of the tea bowl, a brief note on the weather. His guest responds in kind. Their voices are so low you catch only rhythms, not words. You are tasked with replenishing the charcoal. That means you must enter, bowing so low your breath presses into your knees. You slide forward, change the coal with iron tongs, and retreat, all without looking up, all without making a sound louder than the wind. It is here, in these long silences, that you start to forget yourself. You are not Shiro. You are movement. You are timing. You are absence given form. The tea is served. You hear the sip, the appreciative exhale. Then a pause. A fan opens. You enter again, this time with a small lacquer box, seasonal sweets made with red bean and chestnut paste, shaped like little maple leaves. The guest will eat one slowly. The sweetness balances the bitterness of the tea. That's the idea. That's the design. You remember making sweets once as a child. Your mother taught you to press the mold firmly so the ridges stayed sharp after steaming. You remember eating them afterward, warm and sticky, fingers licked clean. Now, you deliver them without tasting, always without tasting. The guest remarks on the flavor. Your master nods. The lady bows her head slightly. Phrase for a confection you carried, prepared, arranged, but never touched. You begin to wonder, if you vanished, would the tea still taste the same? Would they still sip it? Still nod? Still whisper quiet admiration? Of course they would. That's the point. Your life is to create the conditions for their stillness, their reflection, their peace, and in exchange, you are given proximity. And sometimes, if you're lucky, safety. There's a sudden noise, a cough. The guest has dripped a drop of tea onto his robe. You freeze, not because you will be blamed, but because everything has shifted. The guest lets out a laugh, soft, apologetic. Your master tilts his head politely. The lady of the house smiles with her eyes. Nothing more. You lower your gaze. It's not your place to react. But inside, you are already reviewing what must change. A new bowl must be brought for the second round. The cloth must be switched. The spilled drop must be tended to without drawing attention. It's a social minefield, and you must walk it blindfolded. The fan taps again. You respond. The fresh bowl is ready. You move with fluidity, with grace, with the kind of invisibility that makes people forget they ever needed you. And yet they always do. As the ceremony concludes, you wait for them to leave first. Always last in, first out. That's the tea house rule. You bow as they pass. You catch only a flicker of your master's sleeve. His scent is faintly smoky. The guest speaks one last word to the lady, refined. That's the highest compliment in such a setting. Then silence. You enter to clean. The tea bowl still holds a ring of green. The sweets tray is empty, save for one untouched chestnut leaf. You consider it, just for a moment, but you don't take it. Instead, you gather the items, clean the room, wipe the mats, and relight the incense. Outside, the breeze rustles the plum blossoms. Inside, your fingers smell like bamboo and tea foam. And as you kneel once more to bow to an empty room, you wonder, not for the first time, what it would feel like to drink before they did. Just once, just to taste what it's like to be served. The clouds that had loomed gently all afternoon finally give way by nightfall. It begins with a hush, the kind of rainfall that falls like breath, soft, almost embarrassed, but soon the wind shifts, and the sound grows rounder, fuller, drumming on the tiled roofs like slow war beats from the heavens. You hear it from the laundry shed before it reaches full voice. At first, it's a drop here, a drop there. You step outside to check, and there it is, the first signs of your next punishment, descending from the sky like silk strands that soak through your sandals. There is no rest tonight, because the rain may fall, but the bloodstains won't wait. The master's training robe, white with red trim, is folded in the outer chamber. It carries the sweat of an entire day, and more than that, a long, dark line down the inner sleeve. Not blood, exactly. A training injury, perhaps, or maybe animal. You don't ask, you never ask, but it must be cleaned, and not just cleaned, erased. The difference matters. You gather the robes, fold them over your arm, and head toward the outer shed, where the washing stones are slick and black under the first touches of water. There are 2 buckets, one for rinsing, one for scrubbing. You refill both from the well. The rain has already begun to slick the top of the well cover, and your hand slips slightly as you pull up the rope. The wooden bucket creaks. Once full, you kneel, knees pressed into damp stone, sleeves rolled to your elbows, fingers stiff from cold. You begin with the outer layer, not because it's dirtier, but because it must look flawless by morning. If there is even the faintest tinge of pink along the hem, it will be read as insult, as laziness, as betrayal. You scrub the cloth against the washboard, your knuckles grazing its rough edge. The friction is loud in the rain-muted air. Behind you, thunder murmurs. You do not flinch. You reach for the special mixture, the paste made of ash, sake lees, and crushed persimmon skins. The formula was passed down from another servant 3 years ago, along with the words, "Don't tell them what's in it. Let them think you use magic." You smear the paste gently onto the darkened fabric and begin to rub. Small circles, firm strokes, always moving away from the center. You count 1, 2, 3, 27. Rinse, repeat. The rain grows heavier. It seeps into your sleeves, down your back, into your bones. There is no fire in the shed, no light but a single candle tucked in the far corner, protected by a glass dome. The flame wavers, casting flickers onto the soaked floor. You begin to feel the ache in your lower back, the throb in your left wrist. Still, you work. There is a legend about servants of the court who could clean blood from silk using only moonlight and prayer. You don't believe it, but tonight you wish it were true. By the time you finish the outer robe, your fingers are pruned and raw. You hang it along a bamboo pole beneath the roof's edge, where the eaves protect it from the direct downpour. It will take all night to dry. You know this. Tomorrow, you'll wake before dawn and iron it using a charcoal-heated tile wrapped in cloth. But tonight, there are still 2 more garments to clean. You take the underrobe next, the cotton one that rests against his skin. It's stained with salt and effort. You can smell the difference. Sweat and wet cloth have their own quiet language. One speaks of motion, the other of waiting. You scrub again, harder this time. The rain outside becomes rhythmic, matching your movements. You try not to think. You try not to count, but somewhere in the back of your mind, you are measuring every scrape against your skin. Each burn on your knuckles is a mark of loyalty. Each wrinkle in your hands a confession. Historians have long noted that laundry was considered one of the most sacred and lowest tasks in the household hierarchy. Sacred because it preserved appearance, low because it erased evidence. The perfect paradox. You've come to understand this better than most. You erase without ever asking what happened. The final garment is the belt sash, the obi. Small, simple, yet the hardest. The folds must remain crisp, but the fabric must be clean. You pat it dry more than you scrub. You hold it gently, as if wrapping a wound. By now, the rain has turned the yard into a silver painting. Pools shimmer under lantern light. Frogs croak in the distance. The air is cooler, and your sleeves cling to your arms like second skin. You feel yourself disappear into the moment. You are no longer Shiro, no longer servant, no longer hungry or tired or stiff. You are simply hands, rinsing, wringing, folding. This is your purpose, to make something dirty disappear, to send a robe back into the world unmarked, unstained, untouched by the violence it may have witnessed. You think of the samurai code, bushido, honor, loyalty, clean death, polished image. You clean the garments, but no one cleans the memory. Not yours, not ever. Once everything is hung, you return the buckets to the well, cover them, and tip your head toward the rain. A few drops hit your lips. They taste like metal and sky. Inside your quarters, you light a small oil lamp and sit for a moment. Not long, just enough to feel the water evaporate from your skin. Your stomach growls once, then again. You don't answer it. Tomorrow, there will be more robes. Tomorrow, maybe the blood will be real. But tonight, the stains are gone, and no one will know they were ever there. She walks like ink drawn across paper, quiet, exact, unavoidable, the lady of the house. You rarely hear her footsteps. You never hear her voice unless it is directed precisely. But you always feel her presence, like the scent of powdered iris or the shift of silk across lacquered wood. She does not shout, she does not gesture. She looks and the world adjusts. You serve the master, that is true, but the mistress, she does not require your service. She already owns your silence. This morning she is seated in the second drawing room, overlooking the koi pond. The rain has stopped, and the moss-covered stones gleam like jade in the sun. She does not sip her tea. She holds the cup as if it were a question she is not yet ready to answer. You kneel, folding into yourself at the edge of the room, not invited, but expected. You are here to replace the incense. That's all, but her presence makes every movement feel twice as exposed. Behind her stands her maid, older, but not slower. You've never spoken with her directly, yet she once handed you a comb with the weight of a thread. Not because she was angry, but because she wanted you to understand. Some items are not simply objects. You place the incense on the tray. You bow. You wait. Shiro, the lady says. Her voice is soft, softer than you imagined it would be. You lift your head slightly, only slightly. There was blood on the inner lining of his sleeve yesterday. She says, not asking, stating. You freeze, not visibly, not fully, but she notices. You know she does. Yes, my lady. You answer. You don't explain. That would imply you think she doesn't understand something, which would be another kind of insult. Did it come from him? She asks, still not looking at you. You pause, carefully. No, my lady. She sips her tea. Her eyes stay on the pond. The fish move without ripples. Good, she says. Finally, that would be inconvenient. You feel the world shift slightly back into place. She does not care about the servant's blood, but her husband's. That matters. That would carry implications, require adjustments, conversations behind paper doors that echo louder than shouts. She sets the tea down. Tell the cook no mushrooms for lunch. She says, yes, my lady. She rises without a sound, like a poem vanishing before its final line. The older maid follows her with the steadiness of a shadow. You remain behind, kneeling on a floor that now feels warmer than it did minutes ago. You rise slowly as you walk through the corridor to deliver the message to the kitchen. You replay the scene in your mind, her tone, her pause, her gaze not toward you, but toward the water. She knew about the blood, about who it belonged to, about your role in cleaning it. She asked not because she was curious, but because she wanted to remind you. She is always listening. The servants in the kitchen greet you with nods. You relay the request about mushrooms. The cook clicks his tongue. He'd already chopped 3 varieties. But he complies. Of course he does. In the afternoon, you are sent to deliver a letter to the lacquer merchant. It's addressed in your master's handwriting, but folded inside is a smaller slip, different parchment, different scent. The script is rounder, elegant. You don't read it, but you recognize it. The mistress. Historians sometimes speak of the role of samurai wives as ceremonial, expected to maintain the house, teach etiquette to daughters, and say little else. But you've seen the reality, the quiet network of glances, the messages passed inside fans, the way one line of a poem quoted at the wrong time can mean a withdrawal of support. Or worse, an accusation. There is a hierarchy beneath the hierarchy, and she navigates it like water over stone. You think back to last winter. A young visitor from another household came for tea. He was bright-eyed, too loud, too eager to please. During the meal, he complimented the lady's comb. I've seen a similar one in Lord Hosokawa's court. He said, a harmless comment, so it seemed. 3 days later, his household's request for rice from this estate was denied. Politely, but firmly. You delivered the rejection letter yourself. She never raised her voice, but the whole village heard her answer. That evening, you pass her in the corridor. She walks alone. Her sleeves brush the edge of your robe as she passes. You bow. She does not nod, but just as she moves beyond view, she stops. Shiro, she says without turning. The purple ink you use for the ancestor ledger. It bleeds too much on mulberry paper. Try the brown. You blink. Yes, my lady. She walks on. You hadn't told anyone you were the one updating the ledger. You hadn't said anything about the ink blotches. But she knew. Of course she did. Because this house is made of more than walls and rituals. It's made of whispers. And she is the wind that carries them. You walk behind him, 2 paces, always 2. The master's sandals clap softly against the stone. His robe is pressed, the family crest displayed prominently on the back like a silent announcement. People bow as he passes, merchants, craftsmen, even children. You are the shadow at his heels. Neither acknowledged nor ignored, your existence is accepted like a doorway, necessary, but not looked at. Today, The master visits town. On the surface, it's a routine stroll, a check on the lacquerware order, a polite call to the swordsmith, perhaps a conversation with the town magistrate about river maintenance. But beneath the polished surface, it's a chessboard, every step calculated, every nod recorded. For you, it is a walk across glass. He doesn't speak to you. He doesn't need to. You know the protocol. When he pauses, you stop. When he turns, you step sideways and follow. When he removes his outer robe in the tea house, you hold it, not quickly, not slowly, but precisely. The townspeople recognize you, not by name, of course, but by position. Some nod, some avert their gaze, but few servants from other households eye you carefully, searching for any sign of fatigue, any wrinkle in your master's robe, any subtle misstep that might give them cause for gossip. You pass a group of children playing near a vendor's stall. One of them whispers to another, pointing not at your master, but at you. It's strange. You feel heat rise to your face. Though you keep your expression calm, the child mimics your gait, then bows in mockery. The vendor scolds him quickly. But it's too late. You've already been seen. Being seen is not always a reward. Your master enters a ceramics shop. You wait just outside. You kneel, back straight, eyes on the street. Behind you, you hear voices. Two men, speaking softly. Is that Lord Cando's boy? Yes, still has that same servant. Two, quiet one, never speaks. Maybe he doesn't know how. They chuckle, then their footsteps fade. You do not react. You breathe slowly, watching a beetle crawl across the stone tiles beneath your knees. Once, in Spain, you saw a nobleman's servant stumble while carrying his master's sword rack down the central avenue. He tripped over a loose sandal strap. The sword clattered onto the ground. The nobleman stopped walking. The entire street froze. The servant bowed so deeply his forehead bled against the stones. The sword was returned, but the servant was never seen again. Today, you are determined not to stumble. When your master exits the ceramics shop, you rise fluidly, accepting the parcel he hands you. It contains a small, round incense dish, gifted to the magistrate's wife. You tuck it gently into your inner sleeve. Its edges are fragile, painted with cranes in flight. One crack would mean disgrace. Your route continues, past the calligraphy stalls, past the fabric merchant, then to the bridge. The bridge is always the most dangerous part, not because it's unsafe, but because it is exposed. Here, there are no alleys, no side streets, only open air and open eyes. Crossing it is a public display. People stop and watch. The city becomes a stage, and every person, a judge. You match his pace step for step. You look straight ahead, not at the water, not at the onlookers, not even at your own feet. Your sandals are new. That's good. The old pair squeaked. He stops in the middle of the bridge. You stop behind him. He watches the river for a moment. You do not move. A breeze pushes his sleeve. It brushes against your hand. You do not react. Then a voice behind you, a small, sharp bark of laughter. A group of travelers, unfamiliar. One of them whispers too loudly. Who polishes that one's boots? His little ghost. More laughter. You feel your teeth pressed together. Your master says nothing, but later, hours later, back at the estate, you are summoned. He doesn't speak right away, just sits before the open veranda, sipping cooled tea, Then he sets the cup down. You heard them, he says. You bow. Yes, master. Did it shame you? You hesitate. No, master. He doesn't look at you. You should not be shamed. He says, a servant is as honorable as the man he serves. Then he adds, almost as an afterthought, but if you ever cause them to laugh again, whether at me or at your own face, you will be sent where shame lives forever. You bow lower. Yes, master. He dismisses you with a wave. You return to your quarters. You sit in the dark. You replay the walk over the bridge in your mind, over and over, like flipping through pages of a story where you're not the author. You search for the flaw, the wrinkle, the delay, the reason. You find none. Sometimes, the terror is not in being wrong. It's in being right and still being at risk. There is no reward for perfection, only the chance to survive the next test. Historians have long debated the mental strain of servitude under the samurai class. They speak of obedience, ritual, and loyalty, but rarely do they describe the fear that follows you home after a flawless day. The fear that silence is not enough, that being invisible is still being seen, that tomorrow the bridge will still be there, and the eyes will still be watching. The letter arrives at twilight, not by courier, but by hand, delivered personally by a fellow retainer, whose sandals are still wet from river crossing. His face is blank, but the sleeves of his robe are stiff with travel dust. He kneels, buzz, and hands the folded paper to your master without a word. Your master accepts it, pauses, then turns his head slightly. Shiro, he says. You step forward. Prepare the courtyard, he tells you. That's all. No explanation, no visible reaction, no change in tone. But you know, something is coming. You bow and move quickly, silently, through the corridors and into the outer yard. Your feet are careful, deliberate, but your mind races, because a letter that arrives after sundown never brings small matters. The others sense it too. Kenji appears in the hallway, saying nothing. The stable hand lingers by the gate, waiting for an order that hasn't yet been spoken. The lady of the house walks once through the garden and then disappears into her rooms. Even the koi don't ripple the water. It's not long before your master emerges, fully dressed, not in his daily robes, in his hidden tear, a layered garment embroidered with the family crest in black thread. His sword is at his waist, both blades, cleaned, sharpened, as if they were waiting too. He stands in the center of the courtyard and opens the letters slowly. You don't dare breathe too loud. Then he folds the letter once more and places it inside his sleeve. You kneel. He turns his head, barely. It's a challenge, he says, as though stating the weather. A formal one, from Lord Hashimoto's nephew. You nod once. It will be settled tomorrow morning. You know what this means. Not battle, not a war, a duel. And with duels come preparations, rituals you've only seen from a distance. And now must serve up close. You rise immediately. First comes the bath, not for relaxation, but for purification. You draw the water from the deep well. Heat it slowly. Pour it into the copper basin. You add crushed pine needles, the way your master prefers. Their scent is clean, focused. He enters the bath in silence. You kneel just beyond the screen, listening for instruction. None comes, only the sound of dripping water and an occasional shift of weight against the wooden tub. You use this time to set out the underrobes. Crisp, folded, white, the death color. Not always, but often enough. You gather the dual garments next. The clean hakama, the battle vest, the shoulder wraps. You inspect every seam, every thread. You find none out of place. You wouldn't dare. Back in the courtyard, you begin to polish the sword. Slowly, with care, you do not touch the blade, only the cloth. You oil it until it gleams faintly in the low light. It's heavier than it looks. You think of hands it has cut, arms, necks, and you keep polishing. Late in the evening, the master calls for tea. You bring it without question. He sits facing the open garden, moonlight sliding across the stones like spilled ink. He sips once, then speaks. If I fall, he says, burn the robe. You nod. If I win, he continues, prepare the same robe for next season. You bow lower. Neither outcome seems strange. You wonder if he's afraid, but nothing in his voice suggests it. Instead, he turns to you. Do you fear death, Shiro? You pause, then speak the truth. I fear making the wrong step. He studies you for a long moment, then says, good. That night, you do not sleep. You sit on your knees, preparing the death kimono, just in case, folding it with trembling precision, tucking letters beside it, one written by the master, one by his wife, one unread, sealed, addressed to a name you don't recognize. Maybe it's for you, maybe it's not. You do not ask. You never ask. By dawn, the air has cooled. The mist in the garden clings to your sleeves as you help him dress. Not because he needs help, but because it is custom, ritual, service. You fasten the ties without speaking. The sword is placed at his side. The crest is dusted clean. He looks taller than usual. And farther away, outside, the retainer who brought the letter waits. A silent witness, a sword assistant from the other house will also be there. 2 masters, 2 seconds, 1 blade each. One will return. You step back as your master walks through the outer gate. You bow, hands pressed to the floor. He does not look back. He never does. And still, you kneel there long after he has gone. Because once he crosses that line, the house does not belong to him anymore. It belongs to you until he returns, or he doesn't. And if he doesn't, you will be the one to light the incense. You light the candle before the sun rises. Not for light, you know this room by heart, but for ceremony. The soft flame flickers against the paper walls, casting your shadow across the floor like an ink stroke in a calligraphy scroll. This is the hour for quiet hands and quiet thoughts. He hasn't returned yet. No messenger, no sound from the front gate, just the wind against the bamboo. Just your breath, slow and steady as you prepare what might be your master's final garment. The Shina Shozoku death kimono is already folded in the cedar chest. Pure white, cleaned 3 times since winter. You unfold it now with trembling precision, pressing the creases with the warmth of your palms. Every motion matters, not because he will see it, necessarily, but because you will. Because if you get this wrong, you will never forget it. There's a small note stitched into the inner lining. You didn't write it. You don't know who did. Perhaps the mistress, perhaps his former retainer, but it's sewn in blue thread, not black. You press it gently, then leave it alone. Next, the incense sachet. It's mixed from powdered sandalwood, cloves, and dried lotus. You fold it into a pouch of silk and place it inside the inner sleeve. Not for scent, for reverence. If the body burns, it must carry fragrance to the sky. Beside the robe, you set out the wooden comb, the white waist cord, the ceremonial fan, plain, with no crest. Then the letter. This one, he did give you. Place it with the robe. He said, do not open it. You haven't, but your fingers ache to know. You don't even know who it's for. You tie it closed again and tuck it beneath the sash, where it will be found if it must be. As you sit back, the silence begins to press on your shoulders. He left hours ago. By now, one of two things has happened. He has lived, or he has not. You begin preparing both outcomes. If he returns, warm water for washing, clean robes, rice porridge with salted plum, a mat for his wounded hand, incense to calm the nerves. If he does not, the white robe laid flat, the fire basin lit in the outer garden, a basin of water for final cleansing. You think of his wife. You haven't seen her all morning. Her room is dark. Her sandals remain untouched by the door. But you know she's awake, listening, waiting, just like you. You whisper a prayer, not to the gods, but to the robe. Please don't be worn today. Your voice cracks on the final word. It's the first thing you've said aloud since last night. It feels like shattering ice. Outside, the gate creaks. You freeze. There's a rustle of movement in the hallway. A footstep, then another. You don't move. You wait. The door slides open. It's Kenji. He bows. His face is unreadable. Then he speaks the only words that matter. He returns. You don't breathe for a moment. Then you nod, fold the robe back into the chest, and close it, gently, with finality. The candle's flame wavers slightly, then steadies. There is no applause, no relief, no embrace, but there is continuation, and that is enough. You rise, preparing the welcome. His blade will need to be cleaned, his hand bandaged. He will not speak of what happened, neither will you. But tonight, when you slide the robe chest back into its corner, your fingers linger on the wood. You know that next time, it might not stay closed. And so, you cherish this silence, this morning without mourning, because one day, it will be otherwise, and on that day, you will unfold the robe again, without shaking, without hope, only service, only care, only the weight of what was left unsaid. The robe returns before the man does. It arrives folded in a black lacquered box, carried by a retainer from the dueling ground. He bows at the gate, eyes down, arms extended. The box rests against his chest like an apology. You take it with both hands. Bow, turn. You do not speak. The lacquer is smooth, like warm, fresh from the journey. You can feel the weight inside, not heavy in mass, but in memory. Blood soaks into cloth in a way that water never will. It cleans, it speaks. You carry it to the laundry shed, placing it gently on the floor as though it might break. The lid opens with a click so small, you wonder if you imagined it. Inside, the garment lies coiled like a discarded skin. The white underlayer is stained dark in wide blooms. Dried now, but vivid, too vivid. You've cleaned many things. You've never cleaned this. The first thing you do is breathe, slow, quiet, steady. Then you gather your tools, not from the general bin, from the wrapped bundle hidden behind the herb shelf, the one only used in times like this. You unfold the cloth. Inside, a bar of lye soap, dark as ash, a wire brush, and a shallow dish of powdered camellia root. You fill a basin with rainwater. Not well water. Rain is softer, gentler. It has less memory. You strip the robe layer by layer. The outer garment first, still stiff where blood clotted and dried. Then the undershirt, marked with the wide arc of a slash across the midsection, too clean, too straight, to be clumsy. You do not ask what happened. You already know. The challenge was answered, the sword was drawn, and one man fell. Not your master, not this time, but that's not what stays with you. It's the fact that you must erase it. You place the garment into the water. It doesn't float, it sinks immediately, the blood loosening like ink in a cup of tea. The water clouds, the stain grows wanes. You lift the robe out. Scrub. The smell is metallic, not sharp, but earthy, like iron under rain. You scrub again. The brush rasps against the fabric. You count each stroke. 27, the number you always use. You think about the man who died. You never saw his face, but his blood is in your hands. Literally, spiritually. What did he eat for breakfast? Did he wear the good socks? Did his servant fold the corners of his collar right? You'll never know. But now, part of your job is to carry him, quietly, through soap and silence. After the scrubbing, you rinse the robe 3 times. Each time, the water runs lighter. By the 3rd rinse, it's nearly clear, but not clean, never fully clean. The cloth remembers. You can feel it, the way it holds the stain beneath the surface, like a whisper behind a closed door. You prepare the drying line, not the main one, too visible. You string a private one beneath the north eaves, where wind moves slowly, where shadow falls thick. The robe hangs like a question with no answer. You turn to the tools. The sword is returned next, carried in a cloth wrap. Silent as a ghost, you are handed the blade without ceremony. Its edge is not yet cleaned. You bow. Alone, you unwrap it. The katana is beautiful, terrifying. The blood along its edge is dry, but not set. You dampen a cloth with rice water and begin the first pass, wiping carefully along the spine. Not the edge, never the edge. You oil the blade, then polish, then oil again. You think of all the things this blade has passed through. Silk, rice paper, air, flash. You think about how it has never once cut you, and yet it has shaped your entire life. When you finish, you rewrap the sword. You set it gently on the rack. You bow again. You return to the robe. It is dry now, mostly. The sun has slipped low, casting ember across the yard. You bring the robe back to the laundry room, fold it with fresh hands, then wrap it in white cloth. You tie the bundle twice, once for tradition, once for closure. There is no funeral. There is no celebration. There is just a household that continues as if nothing happened. Dinner is served. The master sits alone. You bring him a bowl of barley rice, grilled mackerel, pickled radish. He does not look at you, but as you turn to leave, he speaks. Did the robe clean? You pause. Yes, master. He nods. Then, after a breath, burn it. You bow. You take the robe out to the far garden. There is a stone fire pit there, surrounded by low shrubs. You prepare the wood. You place the bundle atop the center. You light the fire. It catches slowly. The fabric resists at first, then yields. The smell is sweet, then bitter, then nothing. You stay until it's gone. Historians rarely write about what happened after a duel. They document the turns, the location, the victor. They don't write about the servant who cleans the blade, who washes the clothes, who burns the memory. But you were there, and you remember. As the last ember fades, you bow once more, not to the robe, not to the fire, but to the space it leaves behind. That night, you don't return to your quarters. Instead, you sit in the corridor between the kitchen and the outer garden. Knees drawn up, hands folded in your lap. It's not rebellion, it's not fatigue, it's something stranger, something like wondering. The fire is gone, the robe is ash, the sword is clean, the master sleeps, and yet you sit there like a question no one asked. A wind rises from the north. It smells like pine and damp soil. It moves across your face like a whisper you've never allowed yourself to hear until now. It says, "What if there's more?" You look out across the stones. Moonlight glistens on the moss. Somewhere, a frog croaks once, then stops. Everything else is still, except your thoughts. And then, footsteps, soft, uneven, not noble. You stand quickly, unsure if you should bow or vanish. But the figure that appears in the garden isn't your master, or the steward, or even a member of the household. It's a man in travel robes, dark with road dust, carrying a bamboo walking stick and a bundle tied to his back. His hair is streaked with gray, his face is weather-worn, and yet he carries himself like someone who doesn't belong to the earth, only walks across it. A ronin, a masterless samurai. You know what you're supposed to think: dangerous, unstable, dishonored, but he doesn't look like any of those things. He sees you, pauses, then smiles, a small, tired smile, like he's remembering your face from a dream. "I served in this house once," he says, "long ago." You nod, not trusting your voice. He walks to the edge of the garden and sits on the low stone bench where the mistress used to feed the koi. He doesn't ask to come inside. He knows better. Instead, he speaks, soft and casual, like someone remembering their childhood. "I used to wake before the sun, just to light the fire. Thought it made me useful. Thought it made me safe." You remain silent. He nods, looking at the koi pond. "You think if you stay invisible, you'll survive," he says, "and maybe you will, but surviving isn't the same as living." You don't answer, because you can't. He leans back slightly, stretching his legs. "I left after 20 years. He continues. "Thought they'd miss me. They didn't. Thought I'd die on the road. I didn't." He looks at you again. "I started walking, just walking, town to town. Sometimes I get a meal. Sometimes I don't, but no one tells me how many steps behind to stand. No one tells me which way to bow." You finally speak, just one word, "afraid." He nods. "Always, but freedom doesn't come without fear." He stands. His knees crack softly. He winces, chuckles. He picks up his bag. Then, as if offering you a blessing, he says, "You're not a sword, Shiro. You're a man. You can put yourself in a sheath, but you can also take yourself out." He turns, walks into the trees, and disappears. You sit back down. Everything is quiet again, but the silence feels different now. You think about the road, the towns, the possibility, the risk. You think about your mother, long gone, about your father's rough hands. about the time you snuck a bite of pickled plum and laughed for an hour before being caught. You think about your master, his strictness, his silence, his survival. You think about how long it's been since someone asked you what you want. And you realize no one ever has. The thought burns through your chest like a warm coal. You return to your quarters, but you don't sleep. Instead, you begin to fold your things. Not all of them, just a few. A sash, a second pair of sandals, a bag of rice. You pause, fingers on the drawstring, and then you unpack them again. Not tonight, but maybe soon. Historians rarely write about the ones who walked away, but sometimes the ones who leave are the ones who understand best. That loyalty without love is only a cage, and even a servant can hear the whisper of a better life. Blank, underscore, blank. The old man cannot stand without your help anymore. He doesn't say it, but you see it in the way he lingers longer on the tatami before rising. The way his fingers twitch slightly when tying his robe. The way he exhales when he thinks no one hears him, as though each breath carries too many memories. You don't speak of it. Of course not. You simply adjust your steps, so they slow half a beat behind him. You offer a cloth before he reaches for one. You open the screen door a second before you would have, so it seems he still commands the space. This, too, is service. This, too, is love, though no one would call it that. He has grown quieter. His orders come not as commands but gestures. He no longer inspects your work each morning. He no longer scolds. He simply nods, or doesn't, and you understand the meaning. Today, you trimmed the hedge in the courtyard before he noticed it had grown uneven. He said nothing, but you saw him glance at it, and hold that glance half a second longer. That was enough. He sits now beside the koi pond in his older robes he once deemed too soft for daily wear. Now, softness suits him. He drinks tea without ceremony. You pour without performance. The war season is over. And yet, a strange quiet has settled over the estate, heavier than any campaign or duel. The other retainers avoid the main house more and more, offering excuses to visit the village or tend to repairs on the outer wall. The mistress no longer lights incense before meals, and the sword remains on its rack, untouched, for days. You dust it still, every morning, polish it, even, but he hasn't worn it in almost a month. That morning, the sky was pale and silent. You found him sitting in the writing room with parchment laid out, brush still in hand, ink long dried. He hadn't written a word. You bowed in the doorway. He said, "I dreamed last night about the duel, the second one." You didn't speak. He rarely spoke of duels, and never of second ones, not the ones where someone died. The first duel is always honor. The second is usually silence. His servant cried, he said, quietly, behind a pillar. I could hear it. You waited. I thought I was the only one who bled that day. He looked at you then, not past you, not through you, at you. Do you remember that robe? He asked. You nodded. It burned clean, you said. He smiled, just slightly. You always did things clean. He turned back to the parchment. You left him there. That was 3 days ago. He hasn't returned to the garden since. Today, as you bring him warm rice and sweet pickled plum, he waves you in, motions for you to kneel. You do. There's something on his lap, wrapped in black silk. You recognize it. The sword. He places it before him, hands resting on his knees. Shiro, he says. You bow deeply. He doesn't lift it toward you. He doesn't even touch it. He simply says, you've carried its weight longer than I have. Your heart stutters. It's not confusion. You know what this means. Not literally. That would be absurd. A servant does not inherit a blade. Not by law, not by title. But that's not what he's offering. It's something older, something quieter, a legacy not written in paper or passed by blood, but entrusted by time. You do not reach for the sword. You bow instead. He nods. He does not insist. You remember the story of the first blade in this house. He asks. You nod. The one forged by a mountain smith. You say, the blade that sang when drawn. He smiles. No one hears that song anymore. He lifts the sword then, not quickly, not ceremonially, just lifts it and sets it across your knees. It's still warm. You don't breathe. The hilt is wrapped in dark leather, faded from years of sweat and practice. The sheath bears a scratch you recognize. You made it, accidentally, when you were 16 and too slow to dodge a falling screen door. He never mentioned it, until now. You never apologized for that. He says, nodding to the scratch. You look down. No, master. He laughs. It's the only true mark on this blade. You feel something bloom in your chest, like tea unraveling in hot water. He leans back slightly. You won't fight with it. He says, that's not what I'm asking. You bow. I understand. You won't draw it for power, or revenge, or favor. You nod. I never have. He studies you for a moment. You'll keep it clean, keep it ready. You hold the blade in both hands now, arms still trembling slightly. Yes, you say, always. Outside, the wind lifts the edge of the garden curtain. A single petal from the cherry tree drifts inside. It lands on the blade. You don't brush it away. He closes his eyes for a moment. When he speaks again, his voice is lower. One day, you'll leave this place. You'll think about the road, about other lives. You do not deny it. Don't be ashamed, he adds. Even I have. He sighs. Just don't forget the weight of this. Even when it's not on your hip. You bow again. I won't. He leans back fully now, resting against the wall. The light shifts across the floorboards. You remain kneeling, blade across your knees, shadow stretching beside you like a second self. He says nothing more that evening, but you feel something pass between you. Not ownership, not title, but memory, service, legacy, something no one else in the estate will ever see. The next morning, you wake earlier than usual. You dress, tie your robe, and step into the courtyard while the stars still linger. The blade remains wrapped in silk at your side. You do not draw it, but you carry it, like a promise made in silence. And for the first time, it feels less like your master's sword, and more like yours. The days begin to blur, not because of fatigue, or forgetfulness, or monotony, though all of those still exist, but because something has shifted. The master no longer calls for you in the mornings. He rises later, eats less, sits longer beneath the shade of the outer veranda. His once purposeful strides have softened into a kind of practiced meandering, as if his feet no longer belong entirely to this world. And you continue. You still sweep the stones before the bell rings. You still polish the lacquer boxes in the hall. You still prepare tea with the same precision as the first day your hands trembled over the kettle. But now, the sword is yours to tend, not just to clean. And there's a difference. It lives in how your fingers wrap the hilt, how you bow to it before placing it on the stand, how it feels when you carry it, not heavy, not sharp, but alive. Sometimes, you think you can feel the breath of the blade under the wrapping. Like it waits, like it watches, like it remembers. The master watches too, but he doesn't interfere. He lets you carry it to the garden now. He nods when you draw it for oiling. He even asked once, softly, if you could show the younger retainer how to bind a handle wrap more tightly. You did. You didn't speak during the lesson, but your hands taught. Afterwards, the master said nothing, but you saw it. The faintest lift at the corner of his mouth, like a door creaking open in a house long abandoned. The sword rests in your room now, wrapped, of course, covered, honored, but yours. You still jump when someone knocks too loudly at the gate. You still bow before speaking. You still kneel when others remain standing. These reflexes don't vanish just because a blade changes hands, but something inside you grows. Not pride, not ambition, steadiness. The kind of steadiness that doesn't tremble when others shout, that doesn't shrink when others judge, that doesn't run when the wind brings whispers of change. The kind that a sword recognizes. One afternoon, while trimming the shrubs near the shrine, the mistress calls to you. Shiro, she says. You bow. She gestures for you to sit. This has never happened before. She offers you tea. You accept, carefully. Then she says, I heard you carry it now. You glance at the edge of your robe, where the wrapping peaks. You nod. I do, my lady. She looks toward the garden. My husband once told me, she begins, that a sword finds its own master, not the other way around. That sometimes it waits decades to be truly drawn. You say nothing. She turns back to you. Will you ever draw it? You hesitate, then answer truthfully. Only when silence fails. She smiles, then let's hope silence lasts a long time. You bow again. That evening, the wind is warm. Summer has not yet arrived, but the garden hums with the scent of growth. New moss curls across the stones. The koi glide through the pond like ink strokes in a half-written poem. And the master calls for you. You find him in the writing room, surrounded by scrolls he hasn't unrolled in weeks. His back is straighter today, his eyes more focused. There's something I want to write, he says. You kneel beside him, open the inkstone, and grind slowly. The scent of pine soot rises in the air. He dips the brush. His hand trembles once, then steadies. He writes, not a will, not a name, not a command, a poem, simple, haiku. You recognize the characters. A sword gathers dust, not from war, but from waiting, until silence speaks. He places the brush down. You offer him a cloth. He takes it, wipes his fingers. Then he looks at you, and nods. That night, you dream, not of blood, not of duty, not of duels, but of walking, barefoot, along a path through misty fields. The sword is at your side, light, empty, but humming, not threatening, just present. You walk toward no one, for no one, only yourself. In the dream, someone asks where you're going, and you answer, to return the silence. You wake just before dawn. The master is still asleep. You rise, dress, Wrap the sword across your back. You step into the garden, and the morning greets you, not as servant, not as shadow, not as a blade's caretaker, but as the one who, one day, will carry its name, its silence, its story, and never need to say a word. Blank, underscore, blank. Thank you for listening to the entire video. Now take a deep breath, relax your body, and let the weight of the day dissolve like incense smoke. You've walked in someone else's footsteps long enough. Let them fade, let the silence hold you, let the story release you. Sleep well, wherever you are. We'll be here for the next night. Until then, close your eyes. The sword is at rest, and so are you.